Right. So, welcome to this Scrum Master live training sessions. This is the first session I'm conducting for you, wherein today I'm going to explain you, of course, as I know that you belongs to Agile environment, but as a part of the journey when we teach the Agile Scrum, all that, let's start with the kind of roles which normally we have in Agile. At the same time, what are the values and as well as the principles of Agile do we have, and what Scrum Master and why Scrum Master we require, and what kind of Agile planning process do we require to follow. All these will be discussed one after another. So please do remember, this is the session I am going to start right from the scratch, right from the beginning of Agile, right? So this is where generally I am focusing more on. So before I'm getting into the roles and responsibilities as well as the values and principles of Agile, let me explain you on a high level note what exactly Agile is all about. In a broader context, if you see Agile in different forms, like some people say Agile methodology, Agile approach, all that stuff, or Agile process, right? So Agile is a process way of approach, I can say, which is majorly used for organizations to streamline their activities in a more faster pace. At the same time, whatever the deliverables they are going to provide to their customers and all, everything must be a value deliverable. This is what is simple to understand with in reference to the Agile part. Most of the people have some misconception over, I am not generalizing this to everyone, but most of the people have some misconception over Agile way of approach or Agile process is something confined to IT, but to an extent true, but not to the full extent, because Agile way of approach can be adopted for everyone, right? Even organizations can also follow Agile way of approach to streamline their activities of the one which they are following in their regular business process. Either it could be operations, it could be HR, it could be finance, it could be sales, all that. The reason you could see whoever is applying for Scrum Master certifications, either it could be PSM or CSM or XYZ, whichever it is, you could see not only IT, even non-IT people were also pursuing their Scrum Master certification, and they are applying for opportunities as a Scrum Master. Because a Scrum Master is a kind of role, it's more or less something like managing teams in an effective way, in an Agile way of approach. So managing teams is not something confined only to IT, as you know, which is even related even to non-IT, even in HR or in finance. In reference to the departments I'm talking about, either you can relate this to the project, especially in reference to the IT. So Agile is, to be make it very short, Agile is a way of approach, as I can say, which will be majorly used to provide a quality deliverable within short time by implementing some short iterations and all everything. Possible changes can be made at any point in time. So that flexibility is there in Agile environment. The kind of approach, the kind of mindset people must adopt when they are working towards Agile environment should be something relating to that sort. This is what a brief introduction about Agile is all about. At the same time, in addition to that, I would like to mention you, Agile is a way of approach not only confined to IT, even this can be related even for non-IT as well. But whoever is planning to transform themselves into an Agile way of approach, one must adopt the values and as well as principles of Agile first. Because as I told, Agile is a way of approach, but there are some value systems which normally you see, which are essentially important for any team to perform with. Because it's not only about the technical knowledge, what one should be having, but they must have a clear understanding about the value systems of Agile when we are comparing with the traditional processes. Because normally in traditional way of approach, the application development will be in such a way where we do analysis followed by planning, design, implementation, testing, all that. Usually Based on that releases, what are the delivery of the work will be done by us subsequently. That's how generally the process we adopt. But whereas when it comes to the agile way of approach, release planning will be made. So based on the releases and all, everything is what we do. This is what in high level note of releases, which I am showing you. Of course, about releases and all, everything that I'll be planned later, that I'll be explained later. This is a high level understanding about release. Of course, I am not detailing this, wherein we need to define the release goal. So based on the release goal, whatever the prioritization of the tasks in backlogs and all, everything has to be reviewed accordingly. And whatever the backlog items and as well as the tasks we have prioritized, that has to be estimated. So different estimation techniques will be used by us to do the estimation part, estimation of releases and all, everything in different forms we do, like some poker gaming technique, t-shirt sizing, all that. At the same time, estimation of tasks to be prepared, right? I'm talking about estimation in terms of the work I'm talking about. Either it could be something like creating some tasks and subtasks and all, everything we have to do. So wherein to estimate the releases and all, we do that. So once estimation of releases done, then next we'll determine the number of sprints, how many it will be taken, depends on the kind of release what we have, how many number of sprints will it be required, and what business value as well as the complexity we have seen in the particular issues we are about to address. So based on that, creation of release sprint target followed by this target release dates and all, everything will be planned accordingly. So if you see agile from the traditional point of view, agile in the form of agile, usually we majorly focusing on the release part. So based upon the release goal, what is that we have defined, implementation will be done by us accordingly. This is where I can say reverse engineering to an extent possible. Reverse engineering, right? So releases will be planned. So based on that, implementation will be taken accordingly. This is how generally the releases will be planned in agile, to make it very short and simple to you. Now, if you want to understand and adopt agile by anyone, because most of the people come from the traditional approach of application development, they will be technically knowledgeable. They are technically knowledgeable people we see most of the occasions. At the same time, not only technically knowledgeable, but those people will have a knowledge over the testing, right? So coding part, all that. But end of the day, the kind of mindset one must be adopted towards agile environment. Either it could be a scrum master role, it could be a development team role, except the product owner or something of that sort. They should adopt in such a way that it's completely a team kind of effort. Team effort is what generally we have to keep into an account when you're working on agile practices. Either we are following Scrum or Kanban, or we are going for an extreme programming like TDDs or pair programming, all that. End of the day, agile value system majorly gives importance for the team effort rather than individual capacity or individual performances. Capacities can be evaluated, but individual capacities cannot be taken into an account in agile majorly. In a micro level, if you see, team effort is something essential important. How team is performing, whether team capacity planning. This is where generally Scrum Masters do this capacity planning, all that in the sprint planning release time. In the sprint planning time, they do the capacity planning. Over a period of time, whenever we are working on the sprints and all, everything, velocities has to be calculated so that we see the health of the sprint, right? So velocity is one calculation we can do, because there are two major things we see when we are talking about health of a sprint. Because estimated things are two things. One is either we go towards story points, or else we go based on the hours. Hours nothing but the kind of tasks what we have taken, which is converting into hours. So these are the two major estimated issues which will be taken into account. When we are talking about estimation of sprint health and all, two parameters. One parameter is based on the story points. The other parameter is hours, because user stories will be converted, or user stories will be based on calculation we do based on the story points. But whereas when we are working on the tasks and all, that is equivalent to hours. That's how generally this calculation is. So user stories are story points, When we are taking tasks and all, everything can be calculated in terms of hours. That's how generally the segregations we have to do. So this sort of understanding traditional teams must adopt when they are transforming themselves into an agile environment. So they must understand, they must adopt the value systems of agile, which is essentially important for a team to make it successful. Because as you guys know, you are from an industry where you are working in your respective fields. You see the implementation, what we do 100% on agile or not. Because we say agile, we means not we I'm talking about, in general I'm talking about. People say that we are following agile practices, but not to 100%. 100% may not be, because there are a lot of practical difficulties we will be facing. Even though, for example, you are in the managerial roles where you have experience in the field of agile, to be honest with you, you may not implement 100% agile practices in your project right from head to toe, right from in its inception to delivery of the project or delivery of the work. Why? Because there are a lot of things are involved in it. Because as it is a team effort, we must ensure and we have to see each and every member should adopt these values and principles, and they need to work accordingly. That is where it is important. But as it's a human intervention, as you know, people have different behavioral traits. So especially in reference to the scrum masters and agile coach role, this is where it is challenging for us, because it's not something like preparing bundle charts, burn-up charts, all that. That's part of journey. That's part of journey. When we do sprint reviews and all, everything we do that. But end of the day, based upon the report, what is that we have identified, how we have evaluated, and how we are removing these behavioral traits or the kind of impediments what we have identified in Scrum is what important. The style of functioning, the style of resolution towards the kind of problem what we have seen and how we have seen the problem is important. This is where real-time scenarios for Scrum Master is what generally I am focusing, because my intention behind conducting this training, especially in reference to Scrum Master from the real-time perspective, is that of course, basics and all everything, standard structure of training is required, because that's the reason I'm explaining all this. But end of the day, one should able in a position to understand the scenarios, what are the different scenarios and how you need to handle. Because people of different mindsets, people of different behavioral traits, and how you are coordinating these people to make it completed successfully is what is important. Because tools will give you an idea over what exactly the situation was. Because if you have provided some inputs in the system, whether you may be using Jira, Rally, whatever it was, it will give you a clear picture about the kind of status of the reports, what exactly it was at this point in time. So if it is positive, it's fine, okay. But if it is negative, something that we had a doubt in mind that something is not going the way what we have identified or what we have planned, and what resolution steps are we taking, that resolution steps varies from one scrum master to other scrum master. That's the reason why this sort of trainings are very typical, because the style of functioning as well as the kind of approach varies from individual to individual. It will not be the same all the time. Standard structures remain same for a scrum master or an agile coach. But end of the day, what matters is that how you see the problem, how intense the problem, how you have identified the intensity of the problem, and
Hello.
what kind of resolution. Yeah.
Vinod, can you able to
Yes.
hear Raj?
Yeah, I'm able to go. I'm Manju. Yes, Manju. Able to hear
Shall I
me?
continue? Is it okay?
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
able to hear you. Are you able to hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear both of you.
Manju? Okay. I'm able to hear you.
Okay, great.
You can continue, Raj.
Okay, right. So, yeah, I'm speaking something. Yeah. See, being a Scrum Master, the style of functioning, what is that we see and all everything is something essentially important. So this is what generally the one being a Scrum Master, one has to understand. So before getting into those, first of all, we need to understand the value systems of Agile, which will be laid based on 4 different points. The first thing is that individuals and interactions. Being a people who are working on agile environment, irrespective of the role we play, either you may be a scrum master or we may be a development team member, one should able in a position to understand the individuals in interactions. This is the first thing, because we give more importance for interaction in regular intervals among the team members rather than the processing and tools. It doesn't mean that we don't have any process or we don't have any tools. I never say that. There are some process, there are some tools we follow. But end of the day, major importances will be given for individuals and interactions. It's not something like documentation once in a while to interact with. So there will be some interaction among the team members, which is especially important for us, because whatever the deliverables are we going to do, whatever the iterations are we working on. So these iterations are small in percentage, small in size. Small iterations we do something in weeks. Either it could be week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so. So every day, every 1 hour is important, and how many hours people were planning in a day is important even. Because even though 8 hours of time people were spending, we don't calculate 8 hours. When we do capacity planning, especially in a role of Scrum Masters, normally we don't take 8 hours into an account. We may be taking 6 or 6.5 or 7, so on, right? So because every 1 hour are more important, which I'm talking about total effort I'm talking about, right? So availability of effort or availability of timelines of the team may vary, depends on the presence and as well as absence of the team in that particular sprint, right? That there are different techniques we follow. I'll get into that next level. So this is where generally individuals and interactions is more, so that you will be knowing about the kind of status, what is that we are performing in day to day, so that we will be knowing about this well in advance. This is point number one. Point number two, working software over comprehensive documentation. Because there is a part of documentation we follow, especially in the form of Agile, but that is in a form of Confluence. Because in Jira, I think you might be knowing about, there is a tool called Confluence will be there, where you'll be collaborating this documentation of Confluence with Jira, so that whatever the meeting we have conducted on day-to-day basis, or is the kind of sprint retrospection we have made so far once the sprint is completed, or the kind of capacity planning, what is that we did. All these things can be updated in this documentation. So there is, people have some conception over that there is no documentation agile, but that's not true. We follow the documentation, but we have required some documentation to collaborate something, to have a clear understanding over the team, but that will be in a form of Confluence. That's what generally we do. But majorly we work on the software directly. We work on the application on based on the inputs what we have taken, based on the business value complexity, what is that we calculate. So we work on it accordingly. Because business value is also important when we are working on sprints. At the same time, even equally the complexity is needed, because complexity may vary, depends on the kind of role we play. Because complexity might be less in when we are working on coding, but whereas when it comes to database designing, the complexity might increases, right? So these are all different things which are, that's the reason why if you take user stories, the reason why we don't take user stories into hours. The problem is that because user stories will be calculated on story points because of that context, right? Because particular user story may have some changes over a period of time, right? So that's the reason what we do. That's the reason why we do the slicing of user story. User story slicing is what we do. Means we try to simplify that user story to reduce the complexity, so that we come to know what exactly customer has required, all that stuff. Either this slicing you may be doing based on the effort, based on the business value, and different options will be taken into an account to slice these user stories, all that. So working software is what we do rather than comprehensive documentations, what we feel, what we follow in general. There is a documentation format we follow, but in form of Confluence, all that. The third point is that customer collaboration, where you will be seeing this role as a product owner, because product owners are the people who will act as a customer collaborative people, because product owners are the people who will be focused more on it. This is how generally, when you see the sprint planning part, if you see, right? So this is where the product owner role is. The product owner major role is to identify the business value as well as the kind of goal as well as the vision, what is that they wants to achieve finally. That is where generally the product owner role will be. Majorly the product owner role will be majorly focused on that part. So product owner always try to see, project owner always try to see to provide a value for the product, because the perception of the role, whatever we play, may vary. Because product owner, if you are a product owner, let's say for example, the perception is towards providing a value added services to the product. That's what your intention will be. But whereas if you are a scrum master, your perception will be different. Your perception is completely on the team management, the kind of team efficiencies to understand with. At the same time, simultaneously, you need to see how to make product owners satisfied based on the product goal. What is that if we have defined, or the sprint goal, what is that we have defined eventually. This is where generally being a scrum master, we have to satisfy both. Either you have to satisfy the product owner. At the same time, we need to make you utilize 100% of the resources of the team whenever they are available, or the kind of availability what we have, by considering the business complexities, business values, as well as the complexity of the application or the technology which is involved in it. So this is where generally scrum masters are more focused, but in reference to the product owner, obviously see from the customer point of view. Because product owner, you see here closely, if you see in your projects even, of course, this session is going to be ended in 10 minutes. If it was disconnected, you please join again, okay, in the same link. Right,
Raj,
so
I mean, will these concepts will cover this DSGM and CLCD? Less are going to explain little bit the future.
this overall view I'll give you on this, because these are all for multiple teams, which whenever we are going for large scale transformation, when we are transforming teams and organizations and all, these things will come into account. DSDM, DAD, right?
Are you going to give some
Scrum of
picture
scrums,
on
all that. This high
those
level
points
view,
also?
high level understanding
Okay.
I'll give. High level understanding.
Sure.
I'll give an high level understanding, underline this point, right? So not the detailed part. High level understanding in reference to DSDM or Crystal or something like, right? So Scrum of scrums or scaled agile related, right? How this scaled agile is something.
So even in XP framework also, like umbrella
Extreme
issues
programming.
and
Yeah, I focus more on TDD majorly in extreme programming. I
okay.
majorly focusing on TDD practices. Yes, that high level
Okay.
note I'll give on a high level note, because we should
Sure.
not deviate from the point of the training, so that I don't
Agree.
deviate from there. But definitely for sure that I'll be taken as a
Good.
separate session to you, especially on the
Okay.
focus of XP practices, engineering practices of extreme programming. Because of course we have lot many behavioral design patterns like test driven development, behavioral model, right, feature driven development. There are a lot of things, but majorly we focus more on TDD part, not even in pair programming. But test driven
Okay.
development practices is what we follow, especially when you focusing on XP level. XP majorly we go for TDD. That is what generally the practice we follow.
Okay. Fine.
Right. So in real world, even TDD is what we follow. Test driven development, based on the test driven approaches and all, our development application will be takes place. So that I'll cover. I'll cover on a high level note. Okay, I'll cover that.
Sure.
Sorry, I have one question. When you say TDD, in the sense TDD is a technology or it is a.
It's
Sorry,
an
I'm new to
approach.
this.
It's a development approach,
Okay.
I can say. I think is this asking by Vinod? Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vinod.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, TDD is a development approach, Mr. Vinod. It's a development approach because the development approaches in reference to these engineering practices were many. So the first one is TDD. We talk about TDD means test-driven development. Test-driven development means based on the test environment or the test kind of results, whatever we see, the development will be taken place. So the amount of time you are spending in reference to the test related quality related issues and all, everything can be wiped off, can be reduced because of it. This is where generally TDD is majorly focuses on. At the same time, behavioral driven development. There is another concept called BDD. Means behavior of a particular functionality based on the development practices will be taken care of. Next, MDD stands for model driven development. Means whatever the physical as well as the logical model we have developed, based on the development practices or development approaches will be followed. Next is FDD, followed by feature driven development, we call it as, based on the features what we have enabled. Based on the feature driven development, based on the features we have enabled, these development practices will be included. So these are the 4 different engineering practices. Usually we follow development practices, which we follow especially in this XP part. But among these 4, usually the approach what we follow is TDD. That's what it was. Clear, Rohit?
Yeah, good.
Is it clear, Manju? You're listening?
Yeah, clear. Yeah.
Okay, right. So this is where generally this customer collaboration will be, right? So customer collaboration in a form of product owner is what we see here. At the same time, responding to change over a following plan means like whenever there are changes that we can make, especially in Agile, because the issues what we take in a form of user stories has a character. Character of a user story is what generally we calculate in a form of invest. I think you might have heard about this invest principle. Invest principle means whatever the user story will be, you will be taken. Normally when we are writing down the user stories and all. So these user stories are basically individual on its nature. This is where generally invest principle come into picture, because as long as the user story has an individuality, there are possibilities that changes can be made at any point of time. But make sure as long as sprint has not started, we do the changes. But sprint started when the sprint goal was defined and all. Usually we don't do that. It's because there will be reluctancy from the development team. Normally we don't do the changes because it leads to the scope creep. Usually we don't do that, right? So this is where generally this responding to change come into picture, right? Customer collaboration is the third one, followed by this responding to change, means whatever the changes you want to make out of it. Usually this responding to changes and all, everything can be done here accordingly. So these are the 4 agile values we have. So one is individuals and interactions is the first point. Second, working software over comprehensive documentation. Followed by that, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, followed by responding to change over following a plan. So these are the different agile values which normally we follow when we are adopting agile practices, irrespective of the team we belongs to. Because transformation is what generally being an agile coach when we do one part of it. I don't say that that's only one part, because even agile coach, being an agile coach, we do scrum masters, we support scrum masters even, because scrum masters come from non-IT events in most of the occasions. Sometimes, as you know, you see in the real world, because they'll have some difficulty over understanding about the practices of scrum master scenarios, all that, so that we have to support. So these, but end of the day, these are the 4 agile value systems one has to adopt. Right, so this is what the overall introduction about the agile part. Followed by this, these are the 3 roles. Of course, you know it. I have nothing much to explain about. You know that these are the 3 different roles you can see in agile, especially in reference to Scrum. I am talking about, not in reference to Kanban, because Kanban model never see any Scrum Master as separate. Because the major difference you see from Scrum to Kanban is that Scrum has all user stories, sprints, backlogs. At the same time, user stories, sprint backlogs, all that. But whereas when it comes to Kanban and all, whatever the tasks are we going to take, those tasks will be implemented with immediate effect. So your Kanban model is a pull and push kind of mechanism where directly tasks will be taken and those will be transferred to the in progress. From there onwards, it will be completed. So there is no specific set of duration, something like 2 weeks or 1 week or something of that sort, 1 or 2 weeks or something. At the same time, there will not be any kind of effort calculation in terms of story points or tasks, right? So that sort of thing normally we don't do. But of course, as part of report generations, we do like something like cumulative flow diagrams, all that we prepare. But whereas in Scrum and all everything, we prepare more of sprint burn-down charts, velocities we calculate based on the previous sprints, what people have completed, versus the availability of hours, how many hours these people can spend in the next coming sprints. Based on that, how many story points these people can honor to complete with. Because people can take any story points, any number of, but end of the day, being a Scrum Master, you need to ensure, because whether how many story points are they capable enough to handle, whether how many are they taking, right? So that understanding you need to have being a Scrum Master. Otherwise, it leads to a failure of that over the sprint over a period of time. So these are the coming back to the point, these are the three different roles you see. One is product owner, who defines the goal and vision of the product. At the same time, product owner always strive to see from the customer perspective, wherein they need to understand epics and as well as user story development, which is large scale of solution. What is that you need to define? Large scale of functionality or the development model, right? So developing of that particular feature is called epic, I can say. That epic can be derived as a user stories over a period of time. Followed by this, whatever the backlog we maintain, this product.
Sorry. Can you, Raj, I mean, the epic, when you say that, the functionality, when
It
you
is
say
getting
functionality
disconnected. Please join again. I think it's more than less than a minute. Please don't mind. I think it's
Sure.
getting disconnected. Please join and you can ask your question later. I think I'm ending the session. Please join in another 2 minutes, please. Please join in 2 minutes. Again.
Sure.